Good morning, dear students. Hope you all are healthy and fine. See, we have already finished our one chapter of the second semester, one story of the second semester. Chapter number 3, a horse and two goats. And now we are proceeding with the next chapter, that is Hearts and Hands by O. Henry. See, basically, O. Henry's short story, Heart and Hands, is a very interesting story which is full of suspense. This story has an surprising end, and this story deals with generous, kind, and very sympathetic nature of the marshal for the convict. It is because of having compassionate heart that the marshal tells a lie to Miss Fairchild. Basically, in this chapter, we have the three characters. Number one, Miss Fairchild. Number two, Mr. Easton. And number three, the real marshal. Clear? So, it is because of having compassionate heart that the marshal tells a lie to Miss Fairchild, and he does this to save Mr. Easton from the humiliation of being identified as a convict in front of the old friend. So basically, let me tell you what exactly this O. Henry, William Sidney Potter, basically he was an American writer, clear, who wrote under the pen name O. Henry. His all the stories, basically whenever you will read, has an unexpected ending, sting in the tail, unexpected. His stories are well known for their wit, gentle humor, and surprising ending. So the story Hearts and Hands describe the chance encounter on a train between two acquaintances, Miss Fairchild, Mr. Easton. The situation turns awkward when Miss Fairchild notices that Mr. Easton is handcuffed. You can see in the picture also handcuffed to a grim looking man. The man intervene basically involve himself in a situation in order to improve, to save Easton from embarrassment and prevent the girl from discovering the truth from about him. So it is only through the observations of the fellow passengers, those who were sitting beside the girl, the reader is made aware of the real nature of the relationship between the two men handcuffed to each other. So we are going to start the chapter. So all of you open page number 69. At Danvers, there was an influx. Influx means a large number of people, arrival of a large number of people when they all are coming all together. So at Denver, there was an influx of passenger into the coaches of the eastbound B&M Express. Clear? In one coach there sat a very pretty young woman, dressed in elegant taste. Elegant taste means very graceful, very attractive, and surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. Clear? So the story takes place on a train to Denver, and an elegantly attired lady whose name was Miss Fairchild was seated in one coach. The lady looked very beautiful. She was a perfect, you can say she was a perfect embodiment of Western culture because of her attire. She seemed to be, an experienced traveler because she was holding everything. Like an experienced traveler, she was surrounded by all the luxurious comforts. Then what happened? Among the newcomers were two young men. Now the entry of the another two characters is going to be one of handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance. Clear? Countenance, you can say the appearance of a person's face, the expressions. Clear? And manner. And the other, a ruffled, glum-faced, annoyed, very gloomy person, heavily built and roughly dressed. And the two were handcuffed together. Clear? And two of them were handcuffed together. Handcuffed together is basically chained. A fastening consisting of an iron ring around the wrist, usually connected by the chain with one on the other wrist. Clear, everyone? So the two young men entered the same coach and took you know, took their seat where? In front of the lady. So as they passed down the aisle is basically the passages way between seating areas, as we have in the auditorium as passengers, vehicles, or between areas or shelves of goods, as in this stores also. Clear? So here in this particular train, clear? So as they passed down the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat, the only empty seat was offered was a reserved one facing the attractive young woman. So the young two men entered the same coach and their seat in front of the lady. Clear? Till it is clear, I guess, everyone. It's very easy story. The young woman's a glance is a kind of a quick look, fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest, then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance, her face, her expressions, and a tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks, a kind of a glow, giving a round, small amount of color, clear. She held out a little grey gloved hand. So, one of them was the young man of charming personality. He seemed to be a man of bold, frank countenance and manner. And the other young man was rough, sad looking, and heavily built. The two were handcuffed together. At first, the beautiful lady showed an indifferent attitude because she saw the particular both of them from distant towards them and looked at them with disinterest. But as she recalled something, a lovely smile was visible at her face. Then she addressed Mr. Easton. Clear? And a tender pink tangerine her rounded cheek, she held out a little grey gloved hand. When she spoke, her voice, full, sweet, and deliberate, proclaimed is announced that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. Accustomed means used to. Well, Mr. Easton, if you make me speak first, I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? Then, addressing Mr. Easton, she asked him if he never recognized old friends when he met them in the West. This is, a kind of a sarcastically she has spoken this. Because she has understood the particular, she has recognized basically Mr. Easton. And that is why she is saying that Mr. Easton should speak first. But that is why Mr. Easton did not speak anything. So that is why she asked him if he never recognized old friends when he met them in the West. The young man, roused himself. He got excited. And at the sound of her voice, as if it's quite similar, it's quite, very used to. He seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment. Why a slight embarrassment? Because his hand was handcuffed, which he threw off immediately, and then held tightly her fingers with his left hand. Then the time he addressed Mr. Easton, the young man named Mr. Easton was badly startled, shocked to hear her sweet and well-known familiar voice of a woman. Because as the young man was very well familiar with the lady, it was natural for him to feel embarrassed. But he somehow overcome his embarrassment and then clasped her finger with her left hand. Held tightly. It's Miss Fairchild, he said. And what did he say? Calling the lady by her name, he gave a smile. I'll ask you. Now what is he saying? Yes. I'll ask you to excuse the other hand. Why did he ask you to excuse the other hand? Do you know this? Everybody is aware, I guess. Because hand was handcuffed. He gave a smile and asked her to excuse him for using his left hand instead of using the right, as his right hand was engaged at the present. And why the particular hand is engaged right now? Because his hand was handcuffed. Then what happened? He slightly raised his right hand, bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet, because it's not a bracelet basically, it is the handcuff. Clear? It is the handcuff. So Mr. Easton raised his right hand, bound at by the shining handcuff to the left of his companion. Clear? His right hand was handcuffed with the left hand of the Mr. You can say the marshal. Clear? So he slightly raised his right hand, bound at the wrist by the shining bracelet, to the left hand of his companion, and the companion is the marshal. The glad look in girl's eyes, and all of a sudden the charm that was there in the eye of the girl, the glad look in the girl's eyes slowly changed to a bewildered horror, confused horror. The glow faded from her cheeks, and all of a sudden the glow has also gone from her cheeks. Her lips parted into a wake, like she is unable to, unable to express relaxing distress. So when she found Mr. Easton in such a state, you know what happens? Her happiness disappeared. She was extremely bewildered with the horror to see the sight. So Easton, with a little laugh as if amused, he was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. So the time Mr. Easton wanted to say something, the other means the real master, he, intervened in between, interrupted in between. The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance, and the glum-faced man was very keen observer. He was observing everything. So the glum-faced man, who was a marshal, had been watching the lady's face with veiled glances from his keen, shrewd eyes. With his keen, shrewd eyes, understood the gravity of the situation. Clear? And then what did he say? You will excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted with the marshal here. Now, what kind of lie he said? Do you know this? The one who was the prisoner. He said him the real marshal, and he himself has become the prisoner. And what did he say now? You will excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted with the marshal here. If you ask him to speak a word for him, when we get to pen, he will do it, and it will make things easier for me there. He is taking me to Leavenworth prison. It is 7 years for counterfeiting. Clear? So the glum-faced man, who was a marshal and had been watching the lady's face, clear, with veiled glances from his keen, shrewd eyes, understood the gravity of the situation. Before Mr. Easton could say something, the marshal intervened and consoled the lady, saying that Mr. Easton was the marshal who was taking him means the marshal, to Leavenworth prison. And for how many years? For 7 years imprisonment for counterfeiting. Clear? So, oh, said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. Oh, having heard that Mr. Easton was a marshal, she took a sigh of relief. My dear Miss Fairchild, said Mr. Easton calmly. He said very calm. I had to do something. Money has a way of taking wings unto itself. And you know it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. I saw this opening in the West, and well, a marshalship isn't quite as high a position as that of ambassador. So as the conversation began, Mr. Easton and the lady, she was surprised to know that Mr. Easton had, discarded his life in Washington to become a marshal in the West. Mr. Easton told Miss Fairchild that he wanted to do something for his better future and wished to live a luxurious life. But, the main thing is that is the money was the vital need to fulfill this purpose. Then he added that as she was very well aware of the fact that money was the essential thing to keep step with the crowd in Washington. Hence, he thought to seek the opportunity in the West and became a marshal. Maybe marshal does not keep as rank as the ambassador. Not maybe, because it's not similar. The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call any more. He need not even ever have done so. You ought to know that, and so now you are one of these dashing Western heroes, and you ride and shoot and go into all kind of dangers. Clear? All kind of dangers. That's different from the Washington life. You have been missed from the old crowd. So Mr. Easton continued his conversation with the lady. Miss Fairchild then trying to convince the lady and turning her mind. Clear? Then he added that she was very well aware of the fact that money was the essential thing to keep step in the crowd in Washington. So Mr. Easton continued his conversation with the lady. Miss Fairchild then trying to convince the lady and turning her mind from the reality. He told Miss Fairchild that the job of marshal was not as high position as that of an ambassador. So when Mr. Easton showed his unhappiness with the present position of a marshal, you know what reply Miss Fairchild reacted immediately with a warm reply that she liked him more than she liked the ambassadors. She said this because the ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call anymore. He did not ever have done so. She liked the ambassador and that she was no longer in touch with the ambassador. Miss Fairchild was so much impressed with the present position of Mr. Easton that she called him, one of the dashing Western heroes who rode and shot and went into all kinds of dangers. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. So, the lady Miss Fairchild kept on staring at the handcuff while conversing with Mr. Easton. Don't you worry about this, miss, said the other man, because the other man means the real marshal. He was watching everything because he was a keen observer. So he was saying, don't worry. All marshals handcuffed themselves to their prisoners to keep them from getting away. So Mr. Easton knows his business. So the time the lady was looking, the handcuffs, clear na? So as this Mr. Easton was somewhat, the lady Miss Fairchild kept on staring at the handcuff while conversing with Mr. Easton. When she once again looked at the handcuff, the other man, who was the real marshal, consoled her, saying that all the marshals handcuffed themselves to their prisoners to keep them away from getting away. And Mr. Marshal, he was very well aware of his business. Then the young lady asked Mr. Easton if they would see again soon in Washington. We will see you again in Washington, asked the girl. Not soon, I think, said Mr. Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. Here, my butterfly days are over have the two meanings. Clear? So then the young lady asked Mr. Easton if they would see again soon in Washington. At this, Mr. Easton was somewhat confused, puzzled, and told her that it was impossible for him to meet soon because the days of his freedom were over. Or because, he said he has to go for 7 years for counterfeiting. So the lady was unable to understand his words. She was unable to understand. The lady took his words in a very simple way. She seemed to be ignorant of the reality. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly, very casually. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply without the gloss of style and manner. So then, during the conversation, she told Mr. Easton that she and her mother spent the summer in Denver. Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. I think the air here agrees with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Now, that's during conversation, she told Mr. Easton that she and her mother spent the summer in Denver. She also went home a week ago. A week ago. Clear? a week ago. Sorry. Because her father was slightly ill, then she appreciated the surrounding of the West. She also told him that she did not give much importance to the money and called those people foolish who are not satisfied with what they have or what they possessed. But in order to make a great heap of money, they were always running after it. So, I am. I think the air agrees here with me. Money isn't everything, but the people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Say, Mr. Marshall growled the glum-faced man. Mr. Marshall growled means complained angrily. This isn't quite fair. I'm needing a drink and haven't had a smoke all day. After just this only, during conversation, she told Mr. Easton that she and her mother and they all were this and that. Clear. But in order to make a great heap of money. So when the other man who was the real marshal, remember this, that the young lady, she was, she named Miss Fairchild, was not ready to stop her conversation with Mr. Easton. And she was making, kind of developing a kind of intimacy with Mr. Easton, a kind of a good talk. He feared lest Mr. Easton should reveal something about himself. So he asked Mr. Easton to take him out of the smoker car for a smoke. And haven't had a smoke all day. So haven't you talked long enough? Take me in the smoker now, won't you? I am half dead for a pipe. Then what kind of game he played, which he complied with. Clear? So the bound travelers rose to their feet. Rose to their feet means they both of them got up. Easton with the same slow smile on his face. Wow. The bound traveler rose. I can't deny a petition. Petition is a request, he said lightly. And who he? The Mr. Easton. Clear? It's the one friend of the unfortunate. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, My duty is calling me. Clear? Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, He held out his hand for a farewell. It is too bad you are not going east, she said, reclothing herself with manner and style, coming back to an original place. But you must go on to the Leavenworth, I suppose. First you should go to your duty and do your duty. Yes, said Mr. Easton. I must go on to Leavenworth. Yes, I am going there. The two men sidled down the aisle into the smoker. The both of them, they have gone into the smoker. Why did they live from there? Because if the Mr. Easton will stay over there more, so definitely he is going to reveal the truth. That is why. Then what exactly has happened? At both the men left, the main the main thing is going to come main. Clear? That is called the sting in the tail. Unexpected thing. As both the men left, the point of the view shifted to the different passengers who had been listening to the conversation between Miss Fairchild, Mr. Easton, and they were keenly observing the glum-faced man also. The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. Said one of them, that Marshall's a good sort of chap. That Marshall is a very good person. Some of these Western fellows are all right. Pretty young to hold an office like that. Isn't he? Asked the other. Young? Exclaimed the first speaker. Why? Oh, didn't you catch on? Didn't you understand? Did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to the right hand? As both the young men, the point of the view shifted to the two different passengers who had been listening to the conversation between Miss Fairchild, Mr. Easton, and the glum-faced man. One of them remarked on how young the marshal was, and the other corrected the mistake, saying that it was actually the glum-faced man who was the marshal, and Mr. Easton was going to prison for 7 years for counterfeiting money. The detail was that Mr. Easton's right hand was cuffed to the marshal's left hand. So it is quite clear that Marshall would choose to cuff his non-dominant hand to the prisoner's dominant one. Clear, everyone? So this is the unexpected one story, unexpected ending. So just because it is the main role of the real marshal. So the basically the story moralizes the outward appearance are sometimes deceptive. They are sometimes deceptive. They not only mislead us but also invite troubles to us. Those who are greatly inclined to outward appearances are often befooled. In the story, Miss Fairchild is easily befooled and misled by the real Marshal, as she is deeply stuffed with social images and fantasies. She is soon influenced by the outward appearance and remains far from reality. Even she does not notice that. How? Easton can be a marshal when his right hand is handcuffed to the left hand of the other man. Thus, Miss Fairchild is badly cheated by Mr. Easton's outward appearance. In the story, the writer observes that it is wrong to reach on the conclusion on the basis of the appearances. Clear, everyone? So, in this chapter, in this particular story, the poet has O. Henry has used the figures of speech, that is the personification. I think the air here agrees with me. Air, how it can be agrees with me. So personification and hyperbole is also used. I am half dead for a pipe. Half dead for a pipe. Clear? So remember these two lines. Clear, everyone? So this chapter, read it. And the writer vividly describes the settings and characters among the newcomers who were two young men. One of the handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner, and the other a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. So the writer also uses the symbols. The handcuff symbolizes a lower standard of living, especially compared to Miss Fairchild's standard of living. When Mr. Easton points them out, Miss Fairchild is horrified and quick to judge the situation. Clear, everyone? So read the story. Story is very easy. Clear, everyone? So read it. And two more things. Let me ask you all. Wait, hold on. See, basically, in the chapter, hearts and hands. Basically, hands, what it signify. The story, begins with the two people, Mr. Easton and the glum-faced man. They were handcuffed together. So it is the handcuffing that leads to the hands. Part of the title, in fact, it is the hands handcuffed, which are significant for revealing the true identities of the two men. It was, astute passenger in the coach who discovered that a marshal would not handcuff his own right hand. With that convict was the case with Mr. Easton and the marshal. So example, this also comes given example of figure of speech hyperbole. So the glum-faced man said he was in need of a drink and smoke, as he had not taken a drink and smoke for a long time. He feel, restlessness. Hence he asked Mr. Easton to accompany him to the smoker car. So hyperbole in the line, no, I am half dead for a pipe. Clear, everyone? Twist is clear. One more question also comes. What does the word hearts? Hands is done, hearts. So the glum-faced man was kind to Mr. Easton by pretending to be the prisoner. His heart went out to him. He was also moved by the look of the horror on Miss Fairchild's face. Miss Fairchild seemed romantically interested in Mr. Easton. Mr. Easton's heartfelt desire to fit in with crowd in Washington might have led to counterfeiting. So read this chapter, everyone. It's very easy. And finish all the question answers of the workbook. And we have two short stories. Horse and Two Goats, Hearts and Hands. In poems, two poems we have, poem number 3 and poem number 4, After Blenheim. Clear? And poem number 3 is The Bangle Sailor. And drama. Clear? Clear, everyone? Act 2, Scene 1 to Scene 7. So prepare for your